Good evening, good evening, good evening, Durham Public Schools community. We hope you are all very well this evening. And we are so excited to bring you the December DPS Celebrates live event this evening. We have two very special guests that are going to join us. And out of all of our celebrations for the month of December, as they are many, we have chosen to focus this month's live event on National Learn a Foreign Language Month. So we're going to be talking about everything world languages and foreign languages this evening and talk to you specifically about the importance of world language education and how it actually helps your student be able to excel in all their other course areas. My name is Melissa Perez. I'm the Cultural and Linguistic Development Specialist for Durham Public Schools, and I would like to welcome you all here this evening. Please remember that our DPS Celebrates team is many people. Next slide, please. Behind the scenes, helping us to be able to plan each month's event and also providing resources for our online page, which is celebrate.dpsnc.net. Please check out that website for more information. And as you can see here, these are all our wonderful team members. Next slide, please. And I want to send a special thanks to Durham Public Schools American Sign Language interpreters, Ms. Rachel Williams, Ms. Sarah Leonard, and Mr. Charles Storrs. And this evening here with us, we have Mr. Charles Storrs. Welcome, Mr. Charles, back with us. We're so happy to have you here and really appreciate you and your team being able to interpret for us for each of our events. Next slide, please. I would like to point out a little bit about our Celebrates website. As you know, each month as we come on, we talk about what our different celebrations are for each month. So remember that our DPS Celebrates project was born really out of the pandemic in response to student needs. And on our website, which again is celebrate.dpsnc.net, you can find all of our monthly celebrations with K-12 resources that can be used by students, families, community members. You do not need a password to go to this website. You can go directly there, see all the wonderful resources that we have and all the celebrations that we focus on for the month. And so how do we figure out what to focus on? Well, it is in response to our student population and what they and their families celebrate. It's to highlight awareness, provide resources. We also have e-library collections so that students can enjoy books around the resources of the celebrations for each month. The website is provided in English and in Spanish. We have Zoom backgrounds and also Bitmoji classrooms for our teachers already prepared that they may use with their students. And we also encourage you to follow us on social media for updates and news and celebrations all the time. And you can find us at DPS Celebra on Twitter. And we'll show you those hashtags a little bit later on in the presentation. And again, this evening, we are focusing on National Learn a Foreign Language Month, and we'd like to remind you that our monthly live celebrations are always the second Monday of each month at 6:30 p.m. live. Next slide, please. So National Foreign Languages Month came about a while ago, And it is basically to highlight and honor all world languages or all foreign languages, because our world, as we know, is increasingly globalized and interconnected. The internet has brought us all a little bit closer together. And so it's never been more crucial to promote the value of language learning so that we can use the internet to be able to connect with the rest of our world. Next slide, please. And at this time, in order to talk to us a little bit more about National Foreign Language Month and all of the things and benefits that learning a foreign language can bring to us, aside from myself, for those of you who don't know, world language or foreign language is my area of expertise in Durham Public Schools, and I look over the world language programs, curriculum, and all of the world language teachers, K-12. And I've been in this position for 9 years. Prior to that, I was a world language teacher for 13 years. So I'm dating myself. You can tell how old I am now. And also, I present in many language conferences each year that are throughout the state and U.S. And for the Foreign Language Association of North Carolina, which is our state world language group, I am on the board of that organization. And I also have with me here this evening Dr. Leslie Baldwin, who is the World Languages Director for Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and the Executive Director of the Southern Conference on Language Teaching organization. Dr. Baldwin received her doctorate degree from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where she is also an adjunct instructor. She is the author of Keys to the Classroom, the second edition, which is a handbook for beginning world language educators. Dr. Baldwin also frequently presents at state, regional, and national conferences on a wide range of topics related to language instruction and language immersion programs. And she's very passionate about facilitating meaningful learning experiences for students and educators. And our other special guest this evening we have is Mrs. Mara Kobe. She is the K-12 World Languages Specialist for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, where she supervises world language programs in 8 languages for a school district with over 140,000 students and more than 250 world language teachers. The programs include Flex, Dual Language Immersion in 5 languages, Heritage, Traditional, AP, Cambridge, and IB courses. During her 28 years in public education, she worked in rural Illinois and Fairfax County, Virginia, and Loudoun County, Virginia, before coming to Charlotte in 2001. And in addition to years of curriculum supervision at the building and district level, she's taught French in grades 6-12 and Spanish in grades K-12 as well. Her personal classroom experience have extended beyond traditional secondary world language instruction to include Flex and Immersion transition courses. She works closely with Queen's University of Charlotte to support 7 successful StarTalk student summer programs, which are related to world languages, and has served as StarTalk proposal reviewer for several years now. She has also served on the board of Flank, just like myself, and she was actually named the Flank Honorary Life Member in 2014. She also presents at many state and local conferences such as Flank, SCOLT, and ACTFL, and was the recipient of the 2020 SCOLT Leadership Award. She's served on teams to revise North Carolina World Language Standards and provide statewide professional development to support implementation. Ms. Kobe also served as a member of the ACTFL Task Force, and ACTFL is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, and the chairperson of the ACTFL Global Engagement Initiative Award Committee. She served on National Association of District Supervisors of Foreign Language, which is we call NADSFL, Executive Board since 2012, as Executive Secretary, Vice President, and she is the current President of NADSFL. So when I tell you all that we have 2 world language expert, like national celebrity icons with us this evening, that's exactly what we have. And I'm so excited to have these ladies here as special guests with me as we talk about world language education. And at this time, if we could go to the next slide, please. And I will encourage Ms. Kobe and Dr. Baldwin to unmute, and we're going to begin our discussion just around world languages in general and awareness, and highlight awareness about why and what the benefits are.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was quite an introduction. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting us to be with you tonight. Glad to be here to talk with you all. And first, I would just like to express condolences for the tragic events that occurred in Durham Public Schools last night. That's just such a tragedy for everyone. Thank you for having me. Melissa asked us to start just by talking about world languages, the benefits of world language study, which are many, and how this can impact students in other content areas as well. There are numerous benefits. It's hard to list them all, but we've listed a few on this first slide. Certainly, knowledge of a language other than English, knowledge of multiple languages, provides job skills and hiring advantages for students, whether they are graduating from high school or from post-secondary schooling. They would certainly have an advantage over monolingual candidates for just about any job in any sector these days. Studying another language also increases literacy skills in English and other content areas, because by studying another language, you learn a great deal about your own. I know that I myself in high school learned most of my English grammar through my Spanish class, and learned much more about how my own native language works by studying another one. There's a great deal of data and research that explains how achievement is increased on standardized and state tests through the study of other languages. And there are other benefits that are sometimes harder to measure, but involve different kinds of thinking and thinking divergently. And language study actually activates different synapses in the brain and different brain activity than if you don't know another language. And again, higher achievement in the first language and in other areas. The key here, though, to understand all of these benefits is that it takes time to reap these benefits from language study. Just 2 years of a language doesn't always get you everything we've listed here. You have to study for at least 4 years or more to achieve many of these benefits. Think about language study as you think about the study of math. Picture if you only took math or math courses for 2 years in high school, and that's all you ever learned of math. How much would you know, and how much would you be able to do? And how much would that impact your achievement in other areas and being able to apply math in your life into other areas? There wouldn't be much. And this very same is true with language study. It takes more than that small college entrance requirement to achieve these benefits. The bit.ly link shown on the screen is to a link that explains much more than this and has data in detail about these benefits. And we can either go to the next slide, or Melissa or Amara, if you have something to add. All right. This slide explains some of those achievement benefits that I was talking about. I do apologize for the dog in the background, if she's able to be heard. So this slide is showing SAT scores in North Carolina. You'll see on the left the mean scores for North Carolina. The blue is scores in reading. The orange is scores in math on the SAT, and the gray is writing. And you see as you move across the years of study that students have in different subject areas and how that impacts their SAT scores. The second set of bars is 4 years of English study. The third set is 4 years of math study. And that last set of bars, the highest bars, is 4 years or more of world language study, showing that students who have long sequences of language study are scoring much higher on the SAT in reading and in math than if they do not have that language study. So it's a great impact there.
And I would like to point out, so even though in Durham Public Schools, we do have several world language options. There's some in elementary, not all elementary schools, but a good handful of elementary schools. We do have 3 dual language immersion schools, and at the elementary level, we have world language in every middle school and in our high schools as well. And so we have lots of options in terms of, and they do vary some by school, of course, based on offerings and languages. However, we also do have heritage programs of Spanish for our Spanish speakers as well. And so no matter what your future plans are, yes, world languages are an elective course, but if you just take a look at this data that Dr. Baldwin just took a moment to show us, it's really important that we study ELA, and it's really important that we study mathematics. But if you take a look, and yes, we all have to do those to complete the North Carolina graduation requirements, yes, and it's only a requirement to take a world language technically if you plan to go on to a 4-year university. But if you take a look at this data, just take a look at what taking a world language class or a foreign language class can do to the data in the rest of your classes that you're going to be taking state tests on for just 4 years of study in language. And you can begin that all the way in elementary school and continue all the way through. So imagine how much proficiency, if you begin in elementary or middle school, you can gain, and how much more your scores can be positively impacted by having the proficiency in that second language if you study levels 1 through 4 in high school as well. So just keep that in mind as students and parents as you're having these conversations upcoming in the spring about what elective classes that your student is going to take and to choose. Have them explore language. And I guarantee you, if they apply themselves in that language course, you're going to see growth along all of their other courses as well. If we could go to the next slide, please.
This slide speaks to what I said a little earlier about the advantages in the job market. It's a little hard to see here, but the chart is basically explaining the types of language skills that students gain by different years of study in the language, and then corresponding professions in which students can use those language skills. You'll notice that at the bottom of the chart, that middle column doesn't have anything. It's empty. That's where those corresponding professions are. That's because with less than 4 years of language study, you really don't gain enough proficiency in the language to use it as a marketable skill, to really say, I speak enough of this language to use this in my job. Again, it goes back to those long sequences of study in order to truly get the benefits. The first layer there, the first row of professions, comes with 4 years of language study. As Melissa was saying about taking the 4 years in high school. As you move on up this chart, more and more language study gets you more and more language skills that can truly be used in the job market, in the workplace. The students that are in the immersion programs that are starting early and having those very long sequences of meaningful language study, those students are going to have very high levels of proficiency in the language and can use that second, or maybe it's a third language, just about as well as they use their own through that study. And that becomes an extremely important skill for them as they move into the workforce as adults.
And in particular, our Spanish-speaking families, it's important that you note, I know a lot of our students who speak Spanish at home and who have been speaking Spanish as their first language, they often think, oh, well, I already speak Spanish, which is great. But it's not just about when we go into that job market, when we're thinking about in terms of putting that on a job application, that we speak another language. We have to be able to read and write grammatically correct, using correct punctuation and all those things as well. So as a heritage speaker, you have 2 options, right? You can take any of our other languages that we offer, right? So like maybe you want to take French or you want to take Latin or Italian or something like that. But you can also, if you say, well, I already speak Spanish really well, I'd like to sharpen up my Spanish skills, you can always go into that heritage speaker sequence, right? And sharpen your Spanish skills. And those heritage speaker world language courses do count as your world language credit courses as well. So keep that in mind. And so since that is a special message for our Spanish-speaking families, I am going to now explain that in Spanish. Entonces, este mensaje es para las familias hispanohablantes de las escuelas públicas de Durham. Lo que quisiera que supieran es que en términos de estudiar otro idioma, es importante que ustedes consideren que pueden estudiar el idioma que quisieran que tengamos en Durham Public Schools, pero que también es muy bueno que sí hablan español porque hablan español en sus casas. Pero la cosa es esta, cuando estamos hablando de empleos, como la doctora Baldwin nos acaba de explicar, no es solo poder hablar el idioma, sino que escribir correctamente con gramática correcta y también escribir con toda la puntuación que va. Entonces, ustedes tienen la opción de estudiar otro idioma o pueden seguir estudiando el español, pero en un curso de español especialmente para ustedes, los hispanohablantes, que se llama Heritage Speakers, es español para hispanohablantes, y eso sirve de su crédito de idiomas también, y también les va a ayudar a poder escribir, leer y hablar hasta mejor. Entonces, hay que considerar eso cuando quieren escoger sus materias opcionales y cuando están escogiendo y pensando en qué idioma quisieran estudiar.
And Melissa, I would just add, it's bilingual versus being biliterate. It's so important. It's having that academic language to use in a professional setting will take you just a little bit farther. And you already come with so many valuable resources, so much valuable knowledge and language and culture that we want to be able to just take you one step further.
Exactamente, como dijo la señora Cobb, no solo es poder hablar, es poder escribir, es poder leer en dos idiomas, ¿no? Entonces ustedes ya son personas con poderes mágicas en otro idioma, ya pueden hablar, son muy inteligentes, ya tienen mucha capacidad. Pero estos cursos para los hispanohablantes es para llevarlos hasta más. Entonces, de poder ayudarles a lograr un trabajo mejor, de darles ese vocabulario académico que les falta porque no lo utilizan en su casa porque no tienen la necesidad. Para eso son estos cursos. Entonces, tenemos esas posibilidades en todas nuestras escuelas secundarias. Entonces, yo puedo darles más información si quisieran escribirme o llamarme Melissa Pérez. Mi correo electrónico es melissa-pérez@dpsnc.net si quisiera más información sobre esos programas.
And I think the next slide, Mara's going to speak to that a bit.
Absolutely. So as both Melissa and Leslie said earlier, learning another language helps you have a better understanding about English language arts as well. Not just the grammar, but also sometimes comparing the perspectives, understanding the structure of the language and certain nuances of the language. Also in a world language classroom, for those of us who are starting with a brand new language, for example, you're learning everything. Think of it almost like you've jumped into preschool or kindergarten and you have to learn about art and math and science and social studies. And as you go through more advanced levels of language, you're going deeper into all of those other disciplines and learning about the world and all of those beautiful things through the language. And this also happens for our immersion students in in a K-5 setting, of course, but you're not just learning about the language, you're learning how to use the language to learn about everything else around you. Also, when you're studying another language, it helps you to develop critical thinking. It helps you develop skills so that you can be a better collaborator and a better communicator in whichever language you choose to communicate. It's going to take us in the direction of also those social emotional learning pieces. Also, that intercultural proficiency, understanding that there's a perspective more than the one that you know, and being able to communicate and interact effectively with people from or within another culture. We can go to the next slide. And then, of course, you are developing literacy at the heart of everything, not just in that language, but also in your own language. You're going to improve your interpretive listening and interpretive reading skills, your interpersonal speaking skills, as well as your presentational speaking and writing skills. You're going to learn how to communicate ideas and information in your own language, as well as your new language or languages that you've chosen to study. You're going to become familiar with different text and media types in different languages. Sure, Facebook may look the same across the world, but there are going to be other interactive social media platforms or so on that might be unique to special areas of the world. Also, things may look different. The text may be read from left to right, or from right to left, as opposed to left to right, or up and down, things like that. Considering those new points of view, those other perspectives beyond what you have always had in your own experiences, and of course, using those new technologies to communicate, that builds that digital literacy that we've been talking about for 21 years as part of 21st century skills. Melissa or Leslie, anything to add before we go on?
I would just add a quick point to piggyback on what you said about developing and improving skills in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Those are the standards for our English language arts curriculum in North Carolina. And so there are many connections between the study of world language and English language arts as well. And it's written straight into the English language arts standards as well as our own. And there are many connections to be made there.
And I think I'm about to make those connections on the next slide. Oh, one more slide to go. As we're developing those literacy skills, if we go back a slide, actually just for a moment, there are a couple more things we can touch on. So the idea of accessing more complex text, not just written text, but also video, audio, images, and so on. Using background knowledge and context clues to figure out the meaning, especially if it's a new language for you. You don't necessarily have to try to think about what every single individual word means to understand what's going on. Discriminating between sounds and letters, or recognizing characters for languages like Chinese or Japanese. Recognizing word order patterns because they may be different in English than they are in other languages. For example, whether the adjective comes before or after the noun to describe it, or in some places where it comes all the way at the end of the sentence. Analyzing sentence structure, and examining parts of words to try to decipher meanings, so prefixes and suffixes and roots. And for languages like Chinese, for example, it might be which radical character is involved, so that it shows up in multiple different words that have very different meanings. All right, so if we go on to the next slide, this is where we're going to show those connections. So at the state level, we had determined 5 goals for all world language programs last year when we were coming back and trying to navigate through what was happening for our school year last year. And we had picked 5 high leverage goals because 3 of those goals also happen to align perfectly with our 4 world language essential standards, which you'll see in the middle of the chart. So those goals focusing on language performance and proficiency, providing opportunities for students to process language through interpretive communication, to produce language both through interpersonal speaking or presentational speaking or writing. And then, of course, doing those intercultural investigations and interactions. Those line up with our standards. And in our district, we have these things called literacy core actions. And you'll see here that the interpretive lines up with focusing each lesson on a high quality text, whether that text is print, image, audio, video, an object, whatever the text may be. Employing questions and tasks, both oral and written, that are text specific and so on. That comes back to our interpersonal and presentational communication, and providing all students with the opportunity to engage in the work of the lesson. Again, if we're doing all the modes of communication and we're investigating into different perspectives, learning other content through the language, all of these are going to come into play. So very clearly in our district, we are able to have this chart that shows how everything correlates well. And of course, across all of it, we want to measure that student language growth, which in our case also is content growth, through performance assessments, just like any other subject area.
And it basically works the same way here in Durham Public Schools. Anytime our students, if you look at our English language arts curriculum, at the core, they even have, when we take a look at instruction, right? We have listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and that's just what Ms. Cobe just described. So interpretive listening, right? So that's the listening piece, the interpretive communication. We also have reading, which is also interpretive, is what we call it in the language world, right? For speaking, which is part of our critical part of our ELA, we say in the language world, we call that interpersonal communication, because that's back and forth conversation. And then when we also talk about speaking, we're talking about not just interpersonal speaking or having a conversations, but we're also talking about presentational speaking, which is what we call it in the language world. So if you're looking at world language standards and you're looking at language arts standards, they align. Like language arts teachers and world language teachers, I don't know if they know, but they're like besties, because they're literally doing the same thing, right? And so it's even neat if you can get together and talk about and plan and PLC together within your schools, and really realize that the strategies that you're learning in your language arts classes are the same strategies that you're learning in your language classes. The only difference, right, is the fact that in our language classes, depending on which level of that language you are, right, we're going to have some scaffolds and some differentiation there based on, it's kind of like when we think about in language arts, our lexile level, right, at what level we read, right? We're not going to give a student a book that's too difficult for them or too easy for them. We got to get that lexile just right. So the same is true in our world language classes. So maybe what, in a level 1 class, strategies and texts are going to look a little different than they would in a level 4 class, for an example. So if you're taking a world language class, you're going to see leaps and bounds and great help in your English language arts classes. So keep that in mind. Again, parents and families and students, when you are making those choices about your elective classes and really want to work on your ELA scores and work on your other content area scores, consider having a world language as one of your electives, and watch your skills grow across all content areas. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And so I am going to speak a little bit too, and we know that Mauro and Leslie will interject at any time that they would like to talk to you about another wonderful benefit that you can have in the state of North Carolina for studying a world language or a foreign language. And that is something called the Global Languages Endorsement, which is the seal of biliteracy. So world language education and English language arts, again, here we are together with the literacy, right? We said that the connection is there. So you can graduate, right, with having a GLE or Global Languages Endorsement on your high school diploma. So what does that mean? So the Global Languages Endorsement is 1 out of 5 possible endorsements that you can obtain. And this is a way for students to show multiliteracy in English and a world language, right? That's why it's called the Seal of Biliteracy. It's been available since 2014, or the 2014-2015 year. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about exactly how you can go about obtaining a global languages endorsement on your diploma. Next slide, please. So the first thing that you have to do to start your path towards getting the global languages endorsement when you graduate on your diploma is you have to take all 4 required English language arts courses, right? And you have to have a GPA of at least a 2.5, and that is unweighted, okay? So that's the first step. The second step is to take a world language. And in the world language, there are several ways that we can pathways that we can go about obtaining the GL piece of the world language. So the main thing is to establish a proficiency in the world language of at least intermediate low or higher. And you have a few options or a few ways to go about doing that. So the first thing you can do is complete levels 1 through 4 of the same language, and also get a 2.5 GPA or higher, just like it talked about in the English language arts courses. And that's also unweighted, because remember, once you take level 3 of a world language, it is considered an honors class and is weighted with honors credit. But so an unweighted GPA of 2.5 or higher and taking all 4 levels, just like English language arts. Or you can take an external assessment that has been approved by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and achieve a language proficiency score of intermediate low or higher. Now, if you go to the website, which we'll share in a few moments, there is actually a linked list of what those external assessments are. So if you have questions, you can definitely go to the website and check out what those assessments.
Did we lose Melissa? We did. All right. So why don't we go ahead and see what's on the next slide? So there is an extra step for anybody who is an English learner. In addition to those English requirements and those world language requirements, they also need to demonstrate that they have reached at least a developing or level 3 proficiency in all 4 domains on the most recent identified English language proficiency test, which I believe is still the WIDA test. And here is that website from DPI if you want to know more about that seal, our seal of biliteracy known as the Global Languages Endorsement. Please keep in mind that because it is a language endorsement and it's one of the 5 graduation endorsements, it does not get added to your transcript until you are at the point of evaluating your transcript for graduation. So here is that website. It's bit.ly/NC for North Carolina, SEAL, and then GLE for Global Languages Endorsement. All right. Let's see what we've got next.
Well, I'll just add something about the GLE before we get to the next piece, the Global Languages Endorsement. Again, that's a great piece to have on your transcript for students who are either going on to the workforce after high school or into post-secondary schooling. To have that piece on your transcript says, I am at this level of proficiency in my language. These are the skills that I have. But again, you have to have those 4 years of study or take an assessment that shows you are at a particular level with the language. And so the easiest way to earn it is to do those 4 years. When you do that, when you have the language study and have that at least the 2.5 GPA in your language courses and in your English language arts courses, then it's automatic. It automatically goes onto your transcript. If you have language skills in a heritage language, maybe you lived in another country with your family or speak another language at home and can demonstrate those skills on an assessment, that is another way to earn that seal. And again, just a great piece to be able to show upon graduation for our students.
And another little point that I should have brought up, you can earn the seal in multiple languages. So for example, maybe you are a heritage Spanish speaker, but you've done French immersion. And you demonstrate proficiency in both French and Spanish, maybe through an external assessment, or you've gone all the way through AP and taken the AP test prior to graduation. Whatever you have to demonstrate it, if you demonstrate it at level higher than intermediate low, let's say you demonstrate proficiency at intermediate high based on your AP score, your transcript will show, AP French, intermediate high, as well as at whatever proficiency level for Spanish, plus that you satisfied the English requirements.
And again, I apologize for the technical difficulty. The website listed here, bit.ly, the bit.ly link, NC Seal GLE, you can find all the information that the state has to offer around the Seal of Biliteracy and Global Languages endorsement, as well as that list of external assessments. Next slide, please. So I don't know if Ms. Cobe or Dr. Baldwin have anything else to add this evening. I'll give them an opportunity to do that, but I do want to say thank you to both of them again for being here and sharing their expertise around connections from world language to other contents, particularly literacy, and sharing all of their expertise with us this evening. And we hope that all of you will consider all this information about learning world language as you are choosing your elective classes for scheduling in the spring. Dr. Baldwin, Ms. Cobe, do you have anything to add?
Just thank you for inviting us with you, and know that we'll be keeping Durham Public Schools in our hearts for the next few weeks. And I want to wish you all a good evening.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate being here.
Thank you so much to both of you. And thank you all for joining us here tonight to learn more about National Learn a Foreign Language Month. Don't forget, next month we will have our live event for January on the second Monday at 6:30 p.m. And you can visit celebrate.dpsnc.net for more information. Could you go to the last slide, please? If you have not yet done so, please follow us on social media. All of our social media handles are listed here to check out all of our celebrations. And when you celebrate, please tag us at hashtag DPS Celebrates or DPS Celebra so that we can see your posts and retweet those or reshare those on our social media handles and celebrate with you. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great evening. We will see you the second Monday in January. Have a great holiday season, everyone. Good night.